So it's the C Note Show. This is your daily playbook for sex, confidence, and masculine leadership. So here, men in relationship hell get both a man and a woman's perspective so that he can stop stubbing his pinky toe on the coffee table of relationship and of life, right? Stop slamming your pinky toe against that coffee table. That's no fun. So our theme of this week is trust. When will she trust me again? What does she mean when she says, I'm not ready to trust you? Or I'm not ready to have more physical contact because I don't trust you enough yet. How can I even trust myself again? And I want to jump right into what I promised yesterday, which was continuing the story, Cynthia, of like you said, there was this anger, this energy, something happened. I was disappointed again by something a couple days in a row, if you will, right? And I got triggered. And that doesn't mean that anyone else did anything wrong. That doesn't mean that Cynthia did anything wrong. It was my reaction from the fear that's underneath that, right? And the fear underneath is that maybe my she doesn't trust my leadership, or that I didn't ask clearly, or that I was mistaken in what I was asking for, and she made a different decision, and I didn't understand, or she didn't let me know, and so I felt like that was just I was left in the lurch, if you will. I felt like something that I asked to be done for our business. So I'll be vulnerable here, guys, right? I asked for something to be done for our business and she agreed to it, and then it didn't happen. And I'll again be vulnerable and say that that was a main theme in my relationship with my ex. So those of you that have seen the show before know that Cynthia and I have been together for going on 4 years. We met in our late 30s, and I separated and divorced from my wife, from my son's mom, about 5, 6 years ago. And that was a theme of our relationship, of me being the nice guy, doing what I thought I needed to do, and then sort of asking her to do things. And she said yes and didn't follow through on them. And I've since realized that yes doesn't always mean the person agrees with you. They might just be confirming in the moment, or they might be placating you because they don't want any kind of issue. And I had to take a hard look at myself from the past and realize, was I steamrolling her in the past, my ex? Was I being unreasonable? Probably some of the time, yes. That's been hard for me to admit. So fast forward to the story that we were telling yesterday, Cynthia, where basically I get angry in the moment, and I said, and my practice is to basically, when I feel that, which is rare, but when I feel that anger coming, I break eye contact and I ask for a break. So I said, hey, I'd love to say, I need to take a break, and let's go ahead and meet at the time that we planned in an hour and a half from now. And I spent that hour and a half going to my boardroom, which is a process that we can talk about today, where I ask the fears within myself what's going on. And I ask what's underneath the fear. Maybe she doesn't trust my leadership, or maybe this isn't working out very well with our business together, right? And this huge fear of, we go to the ends of the earth, right? Well, can we keep doing this? Can we keep, and I'll bounce it back to what I was feeling, and a lot of you guys are in, can we keep doing this the way that we are? Right? That's the fear underneath that. And I want to talk about how I talked through that when I came back with Cynthia. So with that sort of setup, Cynthia, I'd love for you to share, just to catch up from the story from yesterday. What did you experience when we had that discussion afterwards, when we came back together? What was your experience of pragmatically what happened, in the business, what I set up there, and emotionally, what were you experiencing when we talked about that?
Okay. Super hard for me to separate pragmatics from emotional experience. Sorry. So I'll say pragmatically, but it's going to have like emotion in there. It felt like, as a woman in your life, it didn't feel great at all to have you think that I wasn't trusting like your leadership. Um, and I think this happens a lot with women is, you know, they're really wanting to follow your lead and, guide themselves, but, be in your masculine fortitude and forward movement. Um, and, something that came up for me is what, you were asking me to do in the business setting. I was having some insecurities about. I was afraid I wasn't going to do well. And so I was kind of I was doing a very feminine thing of trying to feel it out and how can I do this better and how can I work this, and kind of having my own emotional blocks to it. So in that women's world, right, it's like, it's okay, like to like feel in the emotional and how is this, and um it's sometimes it's painful to go from the feminine, like swimming in the emotion, to pragmatically in the masculine of like that emotion is fine, but this step needs to be taken forward. So I felt that the tenderness and the angst of that, which is just part of, I think, life of moving from feminine to masculine and back and forth. I think that's where we all are learning to grow. um, so emotionally, I was scared because I'm like, oh my god, Jeff doesn't trust me, and I failed and I messed up, and I don't know how this is going to work out. And then coming back to the table, and when you were sharing with me your emotional experiences, and like, oh, I went downstairs and I did my boardroom and I realized that I'm scared about this and I'm scared about this, and that you also said, hey, and I want to use these experiences for us to grow together as a team and partnership. It was the most massive relief in my body, because I still knew that there was a masculine frame and step I needed to take forward. It couldn't just be in the ocean of emotions. um, but that you were also you know accepting me in that, so you're holding like strong leadership forward. There's no option but to move forward, but you also had compassion for my emotional experience of that and your emotional experience of that, and I really appreciated knowing that it wasn't just anger, that there were deeper things that kind of fueled that expression.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm glad it came across well. Right, guys? Like, whew, okay, came across well. Patrick is asking in the chat here. So why didn't you just tell Jeff those feelings?
I think there's still room for me to grow in sharing. So what I learned from the experience is, if I'm doubting myself and I'm feeling insecure about something, um, that instead of waiting and trying to figure it out by myself, to actually go to Jeff and say, hey, I'm feeling uncertain about this. I don't like not trust your leadership, but I'm concerned how I can do this in a really good way. Because in the moment, I felt like when he was giving a very like masculine, like, you need to move forward, we need to move forward on this. If I was to say, oh, but I was insecure, and but it would come across as excuses, and I didn't want to do that. So I don't think that was the place in the moment. It was the learning of the experience, to again not try to like sit and like figure it out myself, but actually trust my partner to go and share with him, um, and ask for some clarity and collaboration to move forward on a step.
Yeah, and I'll share. So in that moment, Patrick, I asked for a break. I wasn't ready to talk about it. And then when we came back together, I was calm. I presented what I'm going to show you here in a few minutes, the exact steps that I used, so that I admitted that part of me was upset. I said that part of me is also scared because of these things. And here's what I want. Here's the positive vision for the future. So let's talk about this. What can I do next? What can we do next? So I'll lay that out here in our show today. I also want to share that. So I know Cynthia now, and Cynthia, when you, I'm incredibly patient when you're quiet and thinking, because I know that's how you process. And sometimes most of the time, honestly, I'll let you have as much time as you need. I have asked you about that before. When you're thinking and sitting there, what's going on for you, right? Tell me more about that. Uh, and then other times, I'll maybe put my hand on your knee and just wait. And sometimes you need a hug in that moment, and I'll pull you toward me depending on how I'm feeling, that what's going on with you. Whether you're waiting, if I'm waiting for you to think about it, that's just waiting. If you're upset, then it's time for a hand on the knee or maybe a hug or something like that. And it's never perfect, guys. It's, it can be different one day to the next. But my thing is, I wanted to be ready to have patience for her. I wouldn't have been able to interact with her in that exact moment because what I call is at my boardroom table, one of my persona inside me, like the movie Inside Out, where there's the emotions kind of pulling the levers. One of the persona for me is the Hulk. And so when I start to feel this intense physiological response of I'm about to get angry, I have like 3, 2, 1. That's as long as I have to basically break eye contact and ask for a break or do a process of moving somewhere else for myself if it's that intense. If it's that intense, I don't want to focus my energy on the person. I want to take a break. Cynthia, do you want to go ahead and comment on when you're quiet? And what I just said was, I'm assuming you'll agree with me, maybe not, guys, that I offer patience when you're in that space. Can you please give your thoughts about that and how that comes across to you when I do have patience there?
Yeah, it's just such a gift to me because Patrick asked the question, were you ashamed of your vulnerability in that moment? And I, my perception is like every man probably in your life when you were maybe a young boy and you were fully expressing a feeling like, I would say, crying or sadness, and maybe you experience along the way someone shutting you down, like, hey, toughen up, or boys don't cry. So that kind of like emotionality was like squished in you. um I definitely experienced growing up. My dad is so intuitive and wise, and also very masculine and a lawyer. And so, like with Jeff, I would be trying to share an experience that was so like spaghetti brain, right? Everything's connected to everything else, and like I'm trying to feel what is the deepest emotion moving me, and um, what is the tenderness thing I need to share. And I remember with my dad, bless his heart, like he's used to having people on the witness stand, like, let's get the facts. Like, it's not about emotion, let's get the facts. And so that's been a journey in my life of learning that it's okay to share that and not have everything perfectly like, here's the fact, here's the reason, exactly why, and here's how I'm going to prove myself. And so, Jeff, when you allow me the processing space to follow the spaghetti string of everything's connected, and give you my truth, it's I can't imagine anything more kind, and inviting. And it's also helped me knowing that it's safe to share in that way. I'm needing like less time to pause because it's not moving past a fear. It's like, okay, I can be myself. So
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear that again. Fantastic. And so in this clip, I picked this especially because of our topic today. So consider Garth maybe the woman or the in your life or a child, one of your children in your life, and watch what's going on with Wayne and see how that relates to what I was saying, the Hulk within or the little boy who gets pissed off and tantrums. So think about that, or think about how this comes across. Because I'm the leprechaun. Yeah, that's what it reminds me of. On top of being hilarious, obviously, and what's her face at the beginning is fairly attractive. Don't tell Cynthia I said that. And that the leprechaun pops out at times when she's not ready for it. Garth isn't ready for it. You see at the beginning too, he was like, "Oh, I don't really want to be here," and then it escalated. He got more and more and more anxious and more, just like vibrating and felt unprotected and safe. And obviously, Wayne's World 2 is not real life, but it's funny because it's true, right? It's funny because that shit's inside of us. Yeah, Cynthia's smiling. Go ahead and give us your thoughts on the leprechaun, Cynthia. I want to hear it.
I was smiling at Roger's comment. I appreciated his comment. So
Oh, nice, Roger. Look at you, brownie points. She's ugly compared to Cynthia. Compared to C Note, she's ugly. I'm going to move into sharing the tool that I have for today that I've been, referring to, which is how to step exactly through the scenario when it's obvious that you were upset. Okay, I've taken a break, and now how do I re-engage with her? What do I say to connect? I want to reconnect. I just read somewhere that maybe a man might have a boundary, which is something we can talk about, of never going to bed angry. Like, first of all, I don't agree with that. I think trying to force to not be angry is impossible. But what you can try to do is connect, and I'm going to show you that right now. So let's do that. Uh, I I wouldn't say developed this, but I came up with these steps myself. I didn't read this in a book. It's my tool for you guys. Don't be a tool. And first, we want to preface so she knows what we're talking about or what's going to happen here. If she's not meeting you at a certain time, like Cynthia and I were, you can, when you're ready. So you've said, I'm going to take a break. I'm going to go in the garage. I'll see you in an hour or whatever that may be. Or if you're just trying to re-engage and you didn't plan it, you could say, hey, I'd like to talk for 5 minutes. Is now a bad time? And getting her to say, no, now is not a bad time is actually a differentiating, polarizing statement. Her saying no is differentiating. Her saying yes she may be honestly lying about it and really not ready to talk with you. So maybe she's not ready. So this is one way to frame it. I'd like to talk for 5 minutes. Is now a bad time? No, now's not a bad time. And she's probably going to think, what are you going to say here? And this is very, very similar, very close to what I practiced prior to sitting back down with Cynthia. So I'm going to call out the elephant in the room first. I'll bet you think that a part of me is angry. And you're right. And a part of me is scared because I feel like maybe you don't trust me, or I feel like maybe I didn't communicate that very well. So maybe that's something that I didn't do very well. So you need to share a fear or a vulnerability here. So you want to be vulnerable here about really what you're scared about or what you're fearful about, and then immediately go into what I would like is the positive vision. So what I would like is for this to only bring us closer together. What I would like to do is learn from this and understand you even more deeply so that we can be more connected as a couple. Obviously, guys, you have to mean that. Yeah, I want to bounce something to Cynthia. You have to mean what you say here. And number one, I practiced on my own prior so that I was calm. And I only was going to say what's true for me. I'm not going to regurgitate what Jeff said on the call. I'm not going to just read a script. I'm going to feel into and think about what's true for me. What do I want in this relationship? Because you need to tell her what you want. You need to put on the table what you want from the relationship. So I want to ask you, Cynthia, have you had a man in your life give you maybe a disingenuous apology, just disingenuine apology, or to say something to you that didn't seem congruent, like he was almost putting on a platter for you, maybe nice guy, what you wanted to hear? Has that happened with you? And how did that feel in your body when the man wasn't quite certain or you didn't quite believe what he was saying?
So I'm going to pause with that for a moment because I can feel into exactly what you said. And then I also can feel into how, especially my early relationships, I was the nice one, and so that I would do that.
Well, share that with us. Yeah, share what's on your mind.
Well, sure. Like I first, like this is going like back in the vaults of time. Um, I remember being in high school and um, this gentleman who was one of those, he was like in band and he was really smart and, wasn't a jock, which was the thing you were supposed to be at our high school. He was in theater and so was I. And I remember it's like after we had graduated and done, and he showed up at my house in his car and all of a sudden was, telling me, oh, I've loved you and you were so wonderful and blah 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 and blah blah and part of me was so eager for attention and affection. I was like, oh, this is great. It seems like it wasn't genuine. It seemed like something in the moment he did or a last ditch effort. And I remember he kissed me and it gave me, not because I was like in a judging place, but just maybe kind of sick to my stomach. And I was not attracted at all because it didn't feel grounded. And of course, I like, appreciated, said thank you for coming and visiting, but that never went anywhere because it just kind of left this residue of like, oof. And then, likewise, being on the other side of that, of trying to placate and with men and say the things I think they had wanted me to say, like when I was in my 20s, and act the way I thought they wanted me to act. It was so disingenuous that it just didn't land. And um, it was the opposite of attraction for them.
I don't. So I'll share a super vulnerable story from when I was in high school as well. I asked my best guy friend, "Say, John, when a girl gives you a blowjob, do you come every time?" And he said, "Yeah. What do you mean? Do you come every time?" Like, oh, okay. Well, so do I. I don't. I was asking for a friend, right? And your story reminds me of that, which was I didn't realize that I had a need myself, a want myself for much more emotional connection than zero, right? Than just the physicality of high school, and this doesn't really mean anything. And we're all just fumbling around. And I asked my friend, and he's like, "Oh yeah." And who knows if that's true? I mean, just he might have just been bullshitting me, and we're 17. I don't know. But that was the first memory of sex that I recall of not being into the girl, and so not wanting or being able to perform. And that's something that happened as I got out of my previous marriage as well. I'd been with that woman for 13 years, and that was of course a fear of mine going into dating other women as well. So performance was an issue after being married, which is like this it can be a downward spiral of uh Roger said he was bullshitting you. Yeah, that self-flagellation, the beating yourself up, the downward spiral of the hamster wheel. And that reminds me of a comment. So when I just got out of my last relationship, I wasn't confident about sex, and I saw this and I thought, wow, I want to share this today. So here we go. Wife and I married 5 years ago. We're older, in our 40s. How is that older? Like, what the hell? Okay, first of all, we're older, in our 40s when we married. My second marriage, her first. So sex was never really that good between us. Wow, right? What do you mean? So sex wasn't that really? You're kind of making an excuse, or there's some reason sex isn't good because you're in your 40s. Well, her ex is very attractive, and she was really into him and had a passionate relationship. I wonder how he knows that. I don't know. Thus, the fact that we didn't meant she wasn't really attracted to me, and and that was because I was a loser. See, I thought I was a loser, so I projected that onto her. So he acted that way, right? I dressed like I had no style. He was stylish. He was a musician. I work in IT. She even told me once in the middle of making out that I'm not really her type. When I asked what her, oh my God, when I asked what her type was, she responded, jerks. Didn't know I was a classic nice guy. Let's stop the shit. Oh, I face palmed 3 or 4 times when I read that. Right, like sex. Obviously, sex isn't good because of that, and I'm a loser, and he's better than me. And during making out, she says that I'm not her type. And why are they married? I'm wondering. And I'm wondering, guys here that are on the call, who can relate to any of this, or who's in a spot where they're trying to reconnect and they just are relegated to sex not being good, because that certainly does not need to be the case. Cynthia and I are working on a giveaway that'll come out in the next 2 weeks here around escalating among the stairs of physical intimacy, right? The stairs of physical and emotional intimacy. How do you escalate from zero to up the stairs, right? And I know a lot of guys want step 10, but the point is, how do we get more hugs and more kisses and more affection and more just passing, brushing glances, purposeful brushing glances as we walk by each other? The act of love, the verb of love. So I'd love for you to raise your hand within chat, or or in the participant section in Zoom here, or ask a question. Uh, so Cynthia, I want to almost call you C Note because Roger's been calling you C Note. So Cynthia, what's your reaction to that man who sort of has this assumption that sex isn't going to be good and he's a loser, and she's, saying these things in the middle of kissing him. What's your reaction to that?
Well, it reminded me of of being in college and having, someone basically say the same thing to me. You're not really my type. It was kind of like, I'd rather be with your roommate, but um and it's,
That
embarrassing to admit that, but that experience made me get really like guttural and deep and go, what the fuck? Like, I'm worth more than this. I'm worth being with someone who really is into me. And I think, that helped a lot with me stepping into like my own presence and what I really wanted in relationship. When we are like, whatever we're thinking about ourselves, right? There is this magnetic pull around us for people to kind of mirror back. So it's like whatever we're thinking, we sometimes attract people to say and think the same things. And we might say, oh, that really, really sucks. Or we might say, that's a really, really a big gift. Because sometimes when a thought is deep inside of us and we're not consciously recognizing it, it kind of just gets to hang out there and we kind of push it away because we're doing really good in our job or we're doing really good over here. But when we have a partner mirror back something like that, it pulls up like a hell no in us of like, I'm not, this is not who I am and this is not what I'm going to put up with, and I'm going to do whatever it takes to, step forward from this mindset that isn't ours, that isn't truth. And it probably came from something long, long ago, or even a perception our parent held of themselves.
mm, Brett says he was the opposite. He was a jerk in college, in his college days, and became more nice after. That's my thing, Brett, too. So when I'm not in a relationship, it's great and it's totally fine, and I'm not attached, and it's like, hey, cool, whatever. She's attractive or not attractive, whatever may be the case. I'm pretty fine about that. I mean, I'm bullshitting a little bit. Of course, it matters if she's attractive, but I'm pretty cool about it. But then in relationship in the past, prior to doing this men's work, my own self, guys, 2015 was the worst relationship year of my life. And I spent, after finding this men's work, Steve Horseman with Good Guys to Great Men, I did my own work for 8 or 9 months, 8 months prior to meeting Cynthia. And that prepared me for being the man that I want to be. Reading No More Mr. Nice Guy, Hold On to Your Nuts. Right now, I'm reading The Masculine in Relationship by G.S. Youngblood that I mentioned on the show before. That's phenomenal. I definitely recommend that you get that. He's a student of Two Steps Away from David Data, so it's a little less flowy and yoga and all over the place. It's a lot more practical than David Data, which is what I like. But yeah, so become nice afterwards. Brett, I'd love for you to come on and share with us, since we talked almost a week ago, wasn't it? About you asked if communication with your separated wife, your estranged spouse, or I believe you're just separated, right, Brett? And if you could rebuild trust solely over this distance communication, and I said no. But what you can do is be that awesome man along the way. Focus on your reactions along the way. So I'd love to hear, how are you coming back into maybe a middle area there? Not so much jerk, not so much doormat, but being able to swing in the middle of the pendulum there. I'm curious about that. Yeah, Patrick
Yep,
said he.
you're
Yeah, go ahead, please.
exactly right. That's where I'm going. That's where I want to be.
Yeah, how do you see that manifesting even today, or even over the past couple of days?
Uh, Basically, I am more in tune with how I believe things are going. So if I have a thought in my head thinking, okay, maybe I should reach out to her, see how she's doing with the COVID. If it doesn't feel right to me, and and it's more like my nice tendency wanting me to do that versus what I authentically want to do, I tune into that, and then I act according to what I really want to do, to not really go with the whole nice script. because whether I reach out that day or not, it's not really going to make a huge deal in the grand scheme of things. And oftentimes, when my instinct, and I've been honing this for the past few months now, I'm usually right with that because she's the kind of person that doesn't really want to come forward with stuff. So I do a lot of sensing with that and perceiving. And I'm pretty in tune with that sort of intuition. So I've learned to trust that, and then I go with that versus any kind of nice pull I feel inside my head, if that
Oh,
makes sense.
yeah, it absolutely makes sense. That's fantastic. Cynthia and I were literally yesterday talking about that example, Brett, where the guys that come to this work, the guys that gravitate toward this and want to be better men are generally more quote unquote romantic. They're more in touch with their intuition. They understand emotions m- more deeply than, say, the average guy, the average chest beating, whatever guy you want to put there. At least the average guy that the media and movies would portray. But yeah, men here want closeness and connection and passion. So I love that you're getting in touch with more of your intuition and not trying to score brownie points. You're not trying to think of what she's going to like and then do that. You're moving forward with what you want. So there's you, there's her, and there's the relationship between the two of you. So what do you want, and what do you want to do that's healthy and appropriate with the relationship you have now? Right, Brett? That's what it sounds like.
Yeah, and the more I think about it, and the further along I go with that kind of mindset, um, the more I kind of feel like I'm operating, like you said, with those brownie points in mind versus what I really want to do, and it just doesn't feel authentic to me at all.
Okay. So Peterson even said something like this. He did a self audit where he was paying attention to everything that he said. And if it was a lie in any way, or a white lie, or an exaggeration, or to make himself look better, he didn't say it. And he found out that he stopped talking 95% of the time because he was so unaware back at that moment of how much just bullshit was coming out of his mouth, or placating, or trying to please the other person. And that's not the man that she wants, right, Brett? You know that now. That's not the man that she wants. I love that.
Yeah, I'd rather shoot for authenticity because I mean that's really who I am, and I think that's going to draw her anybody for that matter closer to anybody. So if I operate from that mindset, it's just going to be a big help all the way around.
Beautiful. Love it. Thank you. So I labeled them so it's a little easier to understand the steps here. So number one is the preface, the warm up, and we're going to call out the elephant that she already feels is there. Okay? She already knows it's there, guys. All right, so let's call it out in a calm way. This is all calm. We've taken a break already. We've come back. Okay, and then my fear and being vulnerable in that situation. And feel free to take a screenshot of this if you want, guys. The fourth step is share the positive vision. What I would like is for this to help our relationship and help us grow together and learn more about each other. And so we can be even more connected after something like this. Because I care about you and I care about us. So please help me understand. Here's some questions. How can we move forward from here? Okay. And then I should put shut up. All right. Different question. You're not stacking these. Like maybe pick one of these and then listen. All right. Just put shut up after every one of these. What do you want me to know about that? What would you like me to know about that? If she says, well, what do you mean? What should I tell you about that? Well, what were you wanting in that moment? In that moment that I became angry and I needed to take a break, right? I admit that. And I took a break, and want, I want to know. I want to know what you want in that moment. It's important to me. And then a great one before you end the conversation is always, what else would you like me to know about that? Make sure you shut up after that. If you're a woman that is sort of fearful that her man is angry, or it's disconnected, or I don't understand him, why, what's going on? And he came to you with this tool, this don't be a tool, how would these questions come across to you?
I was thinking as you were bringing them up that it's a huge gift, and I absolutely agree. I experience, the all of you gentlemen who are on these calls and do this work are so extraordinarily in tune and trust your gut and are so aware. Um, whether a woman is cognizant of this or not, she is so in tune with you, your body, how you move, the intonation of your voice, your facial expressions. And so again, whether or not she's aware of this or not, she's picking up on everything that's going on in your heart, mind, and body. And um, that can be like, if she is cognizant of it, or even if she's not, that can be super confusing and anxiety producing if um, her partner's not verbally sharing that elephant in the room, even if it's an elephant that is smelly and dirty and it's uncomfortable to talk about. It's so much of a relief for that masculine to create a container of, we're not going to be afraid of this and we're not going to avoid this. um, it's it's very, very much appreciated, and it calms that sense in her that something might be wrong, or um, and that she needs to move into some sort of survival or protection mode.
Mm. Yeah. Last thing we want her to do is be in fight, flight, or freeze. Certainly. Do you have a thought on what we were speaking about, Randy? There about either the tool I was using or a scenario from your life?
No, it looks good. It's sometimes hard for me to follow. Sometimes my wife says I don't have very many good emotional conversations, and a lot of times I'm quieter. And so we're just kind of in a new situation. I retired from a 31-year career in October, and so now I'm around the farm all the time. And now we're really stuck with COVID-19, not going anywhere. So we're trying to work through and become closer. um, I've read two of the books that Steve had, and enjoy listening to you and Cynthia talk.
Good, good. Well, Randy, let me ask you, what's a way for you to practice? How could you practice without practicing with her?
I don't really know how I would practice without her. I'm really a task-driven person, so I'm just like moving all the time on the farm, and so I wouldn't sit and do some kind of theatrics. But she got some ideas.
I do. But what do you mean by
I go
theatric?
practice with my sheep.
Yeah, that's it. Hey, that's exact. I was gonna say, do you ever walk and talk to yourself or the animals, or pray, or wish for positive things out? I mean, when I look at the clouds, I remember my grandfather. He and I flew model airplanes when I was a child, and when I look up at the clouds, I remember the model airplanes flying around, and my grandfather was my hero. And so sometimes I speak with my grandfather. I'm just speaking to the clouds. You ever do anything like that, Randy?
Not usually. I'm a pretty practical person. Not saying it's not practical, but I don't a lot. I'm pretty focused, so that's something I could do.
So if I
My
gave you,
sheep are good listeners.
yeah, your sheep are good listeners. I bet they are. Well, I was going to say, so some practical things are you can use your phone to record into your phone and listen back to how your tone of voice sounds. Because we all have heard the 7-38-55 rule. What comes at 7% is the words you say, 38% is your vocal tonality, and 55% is your body language as far as the messages that come across to someone. And so if I text you, it's only 7% of the normal communication that we have between one another. And that's why you want to, at the very least, be on the phone or FaceTime. And obviously the best is in person. So you can touch a knee, or so you can feel the energy between each other and be there, obviously. But yeah, so talk to your sheep, talk to the clouds. You can speak to my grandfather. His name's Ted. Ted,
Okay.
yeah. And of course, he was Papa to me. Or record into your phone, and that way you can listen back to what it sounds like. And guys, it's okay. Let me put the script back up. And it's a script because you're not going to say this with her. This is a script for you to practice. This is for you to practice, not to hold it up in front of her. God, don't do that. But you can say these things out loud and feel the flow, the ebb and flow. You're warming up. By the way, this could really relate to sex. Okay, so you're warming up. You're calling out the elephant. That can be like a funny, sexy thing you're saying if you want to escalate. The fear and vulnerability is you put something out there that's sexual, that you're not afraid of what she says to it, and then what you do want sexually. So I just threw that in there. But in this instance, it's, well, hey, I'd like to talk for 5 minutes. Is now a bad time? I was angry earlier, and I'll bet you think that part of me still is angry. And you're right. Part of me is, and part of me is scared because I'm afraid of this. I'm afraid that maybe we won't be able to move forward, or this might happen in our family. What I would love is to be more connected and to understand where you're coming from. So please help me understand. What do you want me to know about that? Or what were you wanting in the moment? And then shut up. So I see Jason has his hand up.
I'm looking at this probably from a different perspective. That third step, that line between the third step and the fourth step, and in particular, thinking about that third step, I'm a man who has always been able to jump in the river, as Data would say, and flow with women. And I find myself many times losing my frame in that point, where I am more than willing and able to jump in and just flow and explore emotions and all that sort of stuff. And then in that spot, I lose my frame, my ability to go on with steps 3 or 4 and 5. I get lost in that moment of flowing. And what would be your advice, or um, maybe Cynthia could jump in and tell me how that feels if when a man does that.
Yeah, Cynthia, please. How does it feel when he, to use Jason's word, gets stuck in the river of emotions, in that vulnerability, and maybe in that fear?
Sure. Well, first of all, I can thank you for sharing that, because I can so relate to that experience of getting kind of lost in the river, even in moments where I'm, needing to be the leader, right? So thank you. I appreciate that. And again, I'm not answering your question yet about how that feels. Second, I've had the privilege of standing in your physical presence, and I have to say that um, the the work you've done and the energy you emit just with your being is so solid. I remember just being like, oh my gosh, this man has done some deep work, because it felt like standing next to a redwood tree with you. And I don't remember a conversation getting too swirly. I felt your groundedness. What it feels like to me when there's not container around a conversation, and it gets everyone's in the river together, is actually some of it like feels really good. It's like, oh, I love connecting, oh, like swimming in the river of emotion. But there also can be a point where my head starts to get light and I feel kind of spacey, and like I can't feel the rest of my body, and there's no groundedness. And then sometimes I actually then feel guilty that I, though, in myself, haven't created more groundedness. Something that I do now, especially when I need to hold space, like when I'm coaching or guiding or teaching, is I set an intention, I write an intention or a prayer or my purpose for the conversation I'm going to have. And it's always for an end vision and the best I'm wishing for this person and the best I'm wishing for myself. And then I let that go. And there's this incredible pull of our intention beforehand, or even if we're in the middle of a conversation, okay, what is my intention here? I can stop the flow. And then it's okay to like let the boundaries go, because there's been a vision cast, even if it's imperfect, even if it's just one breath of well-being toward that person. And then the last thing I would say is, being in flow is not necessarily a scary thing, and one can be, I can be in the river with a man and we're swirling and it's not totally grounded, and that's okay. Like, we both can get out of the river. That flow can seem scary, but then when you learn to relax with it, it's a really powerful force. Like, flowing water is a powerful force that I really appreciate.
I think Jason's taking that in. I definitely I jump in, Jason, if you want to ask or bounce back? Otherwise, I have a thought about that certainly as well. I mean, if we were coaching right now, if I was doing a coaching call with you right now, I would ask you to consider, what positive things are you getting out of getting stuck in that third step?
Okay. So here's me sharing the vulnerability. The vulnerability for me is that this is something unique, or at least something that I pride myself in being unique. Every man can do this, but me jumping in to that river and flowing, I'm almost looking for praise. And like I said, then I get lost in that type of relationship dynamic where I'm looking for her to say, "Oh, this is great that we can share emotions like this," and blah 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 blah. Even with all the work I've done and all that kind of stuff, that's still a point where I have a problem jumping out of, and saying, "Oh," and recognizing sometimes that, hey, somebody's gonna have to provide a riverbank here.
Yeah, yeah.
That should be me, but I'm enjoying it. I still haven't gotten that affirmation that we're enjoying this, sharing moment.
Right, right. So you want her to verbally say it instead of just have it actually happen. You want her to
Right.
yeah. So, so I mean, if she doesn't say it, does that mean it's not happening? If she stays quiet, does that mean that she's not enjoying it?
Precisely. And it's like you can stand like you're a third person standing outside this situation, recognizing that that's what your need is, and recognizing that that's where you are emotionally. And hey, let it go. let's be a let's be a let's be a mountain lion here. Um, and at the same time just getting caught in it. I guess where my question is that some of us, especially once I've experienced men who have started doing the work, and they learn how to connect with what they're feeling. They learn how to um they learn how to express that, to share it. And it's a liberating feeling. It's a feeling like, oh my gosh, I why did I live my life this whole way this way? It's so much easier just to be truthful, just to be out there. And then they lose where they are, who they are in that moment in the relationship, in the conversation. And all of a sudden, like I said, they're two people flowing down the river, and there is no purpose or intention, like what Cynthia was talking about. There's no going forward. And then a lot of times, in my experience, what happens is that these conversations end with a whole lot of understanding and sharing and connecting, and then nothing gets done.
Right. So let me offer you something there, which is and you understand this. I'm preaching to the choir here, Jason. But maybe we can't see the back of our own head, right? That was me
Right.
6 years ago. So women love emotional range, and so what I'm doing here is going down. I'm diving down deep, 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 and it's fun and great for those guys that like talking about those emotions and connecting and things. But then you gotta resurface. You gotta come back up and lay that goal out for her. Lay that question, which is, how can we move forward from here? And you're putting it back with those boundaries. So what I find is that it's almost a push pull within these 5 steps. And I would say I don't pause. I mean, I ask for confirmation. Is this a bad time? No, it's not a bad time. Go ahead. I'm not steamrolling, but I'm saying these one after another.
Gotcha.
Okay. And then where you go back, where you dive back down, is when you ask her the question down here. So we're diving down to the bottom of the ocean, then we're coming back up for air, and then we're diving back down into the ocean again, and without having to get mommy to say, yeah, good job, right?
Right. Right.
What I would offer you is, it's actually, you're getting more, you can come up for air and go down again. And the come up for air is the positive vision. And you always want to end with that, like shooting out of the water with the positive vision.
All right. That connects. Thank you.
Cynthia, what do you think about my explanation there? We've talked about diving down, 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 and then shooting back up out of the water with that positive vision. How does that feel when you and I do that personally?
Oh, it feels amazing. It feels like I can kind of really surrender into the relationship and the conversation. And I love going like deep. And then, but there's so much safety and security and pleasure in knowing that as I go deep, there's also going to be a like rocket ship back out. It's very energizing, and it's very liberating to me. And I appreciate it because you hold really good space for vulnerability, right? Because I've experienced, I can be sharing emotionally in the river, and sometimes it's like, whoa, I just shared a lot, and we have that kind of embarrassment feeling, and I feel a little naked in front of this person, and you have a really good way of being like, yeah, everything you shared, awesome in my book, and here's the next step forward.
Oh, super cool. Yeah, that vulnerability hangover, as Brene Brown would say, right? So I'm going to end with that quote from Roger. What I mean is that understanding the opposite sex becomes one hell of a lot easier once you realize that men and women are different and think in totally different ways. I would say that there's definitely overlap in that Venn diagram. So that's what I'd say. There's definitely overlap, and there's definitely space when we're very different. We're complementary, right? We're not the same. We're complementary. That's what I would say. Roger, does that work for you? If I modify your quote there? I also want to say you can connect with us on greatmenmovemountains.com/cnote, or you can reach out to us and ask to contact us directly, greatmenmovemountains.com/contact. Thanks, Cynthia. I appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Bye.